Good afternoon. You are watching the English newscast on Future Television. I'm Linda Tamim, and these are today's headlines. Lebanese poet, playwright, and language reformer Said Ael passes away at the age of 103. Police forcefully reopened a vital Beirut road after it was blocked this morning by the families of the 26 soldiers and policemen held hostage by jihadists on the border with Syria. And former Prime Minister Saad Hariri says the election of a consensus candidate is the only solution to end the political deadlock. Lebanese poet Said Ael has passed away at the age of 103. The poet, playwright, and language reformer was a staunch advocate of Lebanese identity and patriotism, as well as nationalism, and famous for his design of a Latin-based Lebanese alphabet made up of 37 letters. He was born in 1911 to a Maronite Catholic family in the city of Zahli, Lebanon. His writings include poetry and prose, both in Lebanese dialect and in classical Arabic language, as well as theater pieces and many popular songs and pan-Arab anthems. Marada party leader and MP Sleiman Frangieh, as well as former Prime Minister Saad Hariri, reacted to his death on Twitter. Hariri tweeted that Lebanon and the Arabs have lost a giant in poetry. Well, speaking of Hariri, the former Prime Minister says the election of a consensus candidate is the only solution to end the political deadlock that has left Lebanon without a president for more than 6 months. He also expressed strong support for the long-awaited dialogue between his future movement and Hezbollah. Speaking from his Paris residence, Hariri said the talks Hezbollah are designed to diffuse Sunni-Shiite tensions and protect the country against security threats linked to the war in Syria. Commenting on the presidential vacuum, Hariri said neither Free Patriotic Movement General Michel Aoun nor March 14 nominee Samia Jaja could be elected, as neither has consensus among the different political blocs, and the only solution for Lebanon would be a consensus president. Police have forcefully reopened a vital Beirut road after it was blocked this morning by the families of the 26 soldiers and policemen held hostage by jihadists on the border with Syria. The protesters faced off against dozens of policemen before they were able to form a human chain to block the Charles Helou highway, which leads from Karantina into downtown Beirut in both directions. Dozens of riot police stood watch as the families of the kidnapped servicemen sat with their legs crossed on both sides of the highway. Less than 2 hours into the protest, policemen managed to reopen the road, briefly using water cannons at the demonstrators. The protest comes after the Nusra Front threatened on Twitter to execute one of the 26 captives unless Lebanon released a female terror suspect within 24 hours. The Constitutional Council has rejected a challenge filed by MP Michel Aoun's Change and Reform bloc, contesting Parliament's vote to extend its mandate by more than 2.5 years. A statement at the end of the Council meeting said the decision was made to prevent further power vacuums in state institutions. MPs from the two main blocs in Parliament, March 8 and March 14, as well as independent MPs, voted earlier this month to extend Parliament's term for 2 years and 7 months. Aoun's bloc boycotted the vote and filed a challenge against the extension, claiming it was unconstitutional. The Lebanese army has arrested 2 wanted suspects accused of firing arms and taking part in armed riots during raids in the area adjacent to the old airport road in Beirut's southern suburbs. An army statement read that as part of its fight against organized crime and in a bid to hunt down wanted suspects, army troops raided the houses of wanted people in the area of the airport road. It said 2 wanted suspects, Hisham Munzir, a Lebanese, and Hassan Azmouz, a Palestinian, were arrested for taking part in armed riots and firing weapons. The army confiscated weapons, ammunition, night goggles, and other military gear belonging to the 2 suspects. Syrian Foreign Minister Walid al-Muallim says he is open to the idea of holding talks between Syrian opposition groups and President Bashar al-Assad's government in Moscow. His comments came during his visit to Russia, a key international ally of President Bashar al-Assad's regime, where he held talks with Russian President Vladimir Putin and Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov in the Black Sea resort of Sochi as part of Moscow's renewed diplomatic push to restart peace talks on Syria. The last round of talks between Damascus and the opposition collapsed in February over rifts over Assad's role in any transition out of the conflict. But in a joint news conference with Lavrov, Moallem said Russian and Syrian delegations discussed the possibility of holding new discussions with participation of Syrian authorities and opposition groups. France's parliament debates over the motion to recognize a Palestinian state. That's coming up next. Welcome back. The United Nations has declared a state of emergency in the Gaza Strip after 2 days of heavy rains and flooding in the war-torn Palestinian enclave. Torrential rain has overwhelmed some areas in the Gaza Strip, causing huge damage and forcing hundreds of residents to evacuate their homes. UNRWA Director of Operations in Gaza, Robert Turner, said the agency was very concerned about such severe storms this early this season, especially in Gaza, as Gaza is still dealing with the aftermath of the recent conflict, as well as an acute fuel and energy crisis. UNRWA said it closed 63 schools and is supplying emergency fuel to municipalities, water, sanitation and health facilities. An estimated 100,000 Palestinians remain homeless in Gaza 3 months after the Israeli offensive. French politicians are due to debate a motion urging the government to recognize Palestine as a state amid growing European frustration at the paralyzed Middle East process. The symbolic motion is expected to pass comfortably on December 2nd when the lower house of parliament votes on the text proposed by the ruling socialists. The vote comes hot on the heels of a similar resolution approved by British legislators on October 13th, Spanish MPs on November 18th, and the formal recognition by Sweden on October 30th. It is non-binding on the government, although French Foreign Minister Laurent Fabius told reporters that France will obviously recognize the Palestinian state at a certain moment. Iraq's finance minister Hoshyar Zebari has called for reforms to battle corruption in the Iraqi military that collapsed in the face of an Islamic State advance, as he prepared to send nearly a quarter of the 2015 budget on defense.
15 budget, which we are going to present it very soon to the cabinet, nearly 23% of the budget really go for defense. And this is a huge amount. And the government is living up to its commitment toward all the military contracts with the United States, with other countries. But definitely we will recommend strongly that there should be some serious, deep-rooted reforms in the military security establishment to fight corruption, mismanagement, to make sure that they get the right weapons, they get the right salaries, they get the right support, but at the same time that the military has to be cleaned. No, definitely there has to be check and balances. All the formation has to be reviewed in terms of the numbers. That there should be no ghost members of the military. People should be accountable. Your battalion, the number of your members should be accounted for weapons, for salaries, for munitions, for food, for other things. These are basic things, you see. It doesn't need a genius.
Pope Francis has begun his first visit to Turkey in a trip aimed at building bridges with Islam and supporting the Christian minorities in the Middle East. Francis will spend the first of 3 days in Turkey in the capital Ankara, notably holding a meeting with President Recep Tayyip Erdogan at his presidential palace. He is then due to arrive to Istanbul, visiting key sites of the city's Byzantine and Ottoman heritage, as well as meeting the Orthodox Ecumenical Patriarch Bartholomew I. The Pope will also visit Istanbul's Hagia Sophia, a Byzantine-era church that was turned into a mosque after the conquest of Constantinople in 1453, and the Ottoman-era Sultan Ahmed Mosque, also known as the Blue Mosque. Some 2,700 police are set to supervise his visit in Ankara, a number that will rise to 7,000 in Istanbul. Egyptian government officials say a senior army officer has been killed while security forces have arrested more than 100 people in advance of planned anti-government demonstrations. The death occurred as Egypt braced for potential violence during Friday's planned protest by Salafists. with security forces pledging to confront any unrest with lethal force. The protest call comes from the Salafist Front, a faction in the Salafist movement concentrated in parts of the Nile Delta. It is the first attempt in months to hold large protests since the military's overthrow last year of President Mohamed Morsi. Morsi's Muslim Brotherhood supports the planned demonstrations but has urged the Salafist Front to avoid confrontations with security forces. Britain's Foreign Secretary Philip Hammond has condemned a blast on a British embassy vehicle in the Afghan capital Kabul, which has killed 5 people. The Taliban has claimed responsibility for a surge of attacks hitting Afghanistan's capital.
Well, first of all, let me take this opportunity to offer my condolences to those who lost their lives this morning, the families and friends of those who lost their lives and were injured in this appalling attack. We know that alongside one British civilian security officer, one Afghan locally employed member of the embassy staff, and a number of other Afghans were killed in this senseless and cowardly attack through what appears to be a suicide vehicle bomb. We don't have full details at the moment. Obviously, there will be a full investigation. So I can't answer the question as to whether this was a specifically targeted attack on British interests. What I can say is that it reminds us once again of the risks that our personnel take every day in trying to help the Afghans to build a better future for that country, and by helping them to do so, to protect our own security and our own interests. We hugely value their work. We're extremely grateful to them for that work, and I know that the British people will always recognise and appreciate the huge risks that they take on our behalf.
Police in New York have arrested 7 protesters who tried to disrupt the massive Thanksgiving Day parade over the decision not to charge a Ferguson cop who shot dead an unarmed black teen. The demonstrators, angry over this week's decision by Missouri grand jury not to indict the white officer over the August death of Michael Brown, were detained for disorderly conduct. They allegedly tried to approach the route of the parade, knocking down metal barricades when police barred their path, according to local media. Activists had used the Stop the Parade hashtag on Twitter to gather support for Thursday's protest. In New York, 10 people had been arrested on Tuesday during demonstrations that blocked bridges and tunnels in the Big Apple. All have been released and are due to appear in court. London's Oxford Street dimmed its famous Christmas lights to announce the start of Black Friday as shoppers scrambled to shopping malls, supermarkets and big chains across the country to get their hands on major discount offers. The American holiday, which is one of the biggest shopping days in the U.S. and follows Thanksgiving, is garnering popularity in the U.K. Police were called to at least 4 supermarkets in London due to overcrowding, and shoppers fell to the ground as they rushed into the Asda store in Wembley. At the Wembley store, shoppers fought to get their hands on electric appliances, including large flat-screen television sets. Asda said its event this year will be 3 times bigger than last year's, with 441 stores taking part. Black Friday deals in the UK include some 70% sale offers. Some retailers have also been accused of inflating prices before then slashing them to give the appearance of bargains. This marks the end of our bulletin for today. Now for a reminder of our top stories. Lebanese poet, playwright and language reformer Said Ael passes away at the age of 103. Police forcefully reopened a vital Beirut road after it was blocked this morning by the families of the 26 soldiers and policemen held hostage by jihadists on the border with Syria. And former Prime Minister Saad Hariri says the election of a consensus candidate is the only solution to end the political deadlock in the country. That's it for me in the news team here at Future Television. I'm Linda Tanim, and I'll see you again tomorrow for more updates. Take care.
And the assassination of Prime